Abdul El-Syed, his campaign really came on towards the end. For the most part, the majority of his campaign, there wasn't a lot of attention on it, but he got that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez push towards the end. Ocasio-Cortez came down. Bernie Sanders came down for him. I think if you would have gotten that kind of support a little earlier on, it could have made a difference. I don't know if he would have won because he did lose by, I believe, 20 points. And again, Gretchen Whitmer, she was a state leader in the Michigan Senate. And she is well known in the state of Michigan. And again, she had a lot of money. I think her father was the former CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield. She got endorsed by Blue Cross Blue Shield. She has a ton of money from Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I think the bottom line is, in a lot of these races, especially statewide, in my live stream yesterday, which the majority of you probably didn't see because YouTube is suppressing the content, in the live stream yesterday, I said, it is different when you're in a district like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez versus running statewide. Because statewide, you're up against the entire state's political establishment. You're up against a lot of money. I guarantee you, money from DeVos, Betsy DeVos, money from foundations, and money from Blue Cross Blue Shield was working against Abdul El-Syed. He also did not have the name recognition of a Gretchen Whitmer. So I don't think it's all bad as far as Abdul El-Syed's loss. I think we are going to have to understand as a progressive movement that the corruption in this country did not start overnight. It did not start overnight. You are going to have more losses at first than you're going to have victories, like Ocasio-Cortez, which was a stunner, but she just outworked Joe Crowley in New York. And Joe Crowley was an arrogant, elitist tool who, like always, took it for granted that he was just going to win. So we're going to have more Ocasio-Cortezes, but not in every contest. Same thing with Cori Bush in St. Louis. She was defeated. I think she ran a good campaign. I know Cori Bush. I interviewed her in St. Louis before and after I was arrested there last year. She is a great candidate. She's a nurse and just a great person. But it's difficult, particularly your first time running, to get that name recognition. Especially, reminder, all of these candidates are swearing off corporate money. It's not easy to defeat healthcare companies that are donating in the millions to your opposition. It's not easy to defeat real estate developers that are donating into the millions. It's not easy to defeat a lot of candidates. And Rosanita makes a great point. There was a third candidate, kind of spoiler, Shri. I forget his last name in the Michigan governor's race on the Democratic side, that I believe spent at least $10 million on his own campaign, and Abdul El-Syed got more votes than him. So money is not automatically going to be the reason a candidate defeats a progressive. So the bottom line is this. I think someone like Abdul El-Syed, it's the same thing that I said when Tim Canova lost to Debbie Wasserman Schultz last year. Those candidates have to take their loss. Obviously, we're all human, so they're going to lick their chops for a little bit and get out there, stay in the public eye, speak out against corporate establishment candidates that beat them, protest and organize. Door knocking and getting your name out there if you want to be a candidate isn't only for when you're running. It's around the clock, always, to get your name out there. That includes visiting other parts of the state or the district that you might have not visited or focused on during your primary. It includes being an active progressive on national stories. If there is another Standing Rock, for example, if there is another protest like the Ferguson protest, candidates should do whatever they can to get there, because that's how you build national name recognition. That's how you show people you're progressive, whether you win or you lose. Bernie Sanders, for example, if you watch his biography, he lost several times before winning. So, it's not all bad, okay? And there were some lower level names that won progressives. So there was some victory. There was also historic victories in Missouri, which I want to get to. You had, this one really was of interest to me. Again, on Facebook, you might not see the article. For some reason, I'm not able to show articles on Facebook, but I am on YouTube and Periscope. An underdog and a real reformer won for prosecutor in Missouri, defeating a long time, in my view, corrupt prosecutor, Robert McCullough. I'll read you this. Nearly 4 years to the day after a white police officer in Ferguson, Missouri shot an unarmed black teenager named Michael Brown, voters in the state's primary election on Tuesday ousted the long-standing county prosecutor who faced fierce criticism for his handling of the case. Robert McCullough, who has been the St. Louis County prosecutor for almost 3 decades, failed to indict the officer who killed Brown in 2014, an incident that sparked widespread protests and galvanized a national conversation about police brutality. Oh, you want to call it a conversation, Mother Jones? His opponent in the primary, Wesley Bell, a 43-year-old Ferguson city councilman and former public defender, prosecutor, and judge, who helped push police accountability and court reforms in Ferguson after Brown's killings, and who campaigned on a progressive platform ending cash bail for nonviolent offenses. That guy won. With 89% of the ballots counted, Bell declared victory late Tuesday night with 55% of the vote over McCullough's 45%. Both are Democrats. No Republicans were on the ballot for the primary race. Now, let me tell you something. Not to keep saying it, but I was jailed with my cameraman and tie. I heard horror stories from African Americans in St. Louis. St. Louis, honestly, some of them told me it's like modern day Jim Crow in St. Louis. So, and by the way, this Democratic prosecutor, Robert McCullough, was part of the problem. They take a lot of money, the police union and other corporate entities in Missouri and St. Louis to keep things as a status quo. And they have a major prison industrial complex in St. Louis that makes a lot of money by keeping black people jailed for really ridiculous things like a broken taillight or paying your parking ticket late. There are a lot of black people in the workhouse jail in St. Louis for broken taillights, not paying your parking ticket, and other reasons that white people don't go to jail and stay in jail for. So that's a big victory in Missouri. There was also a big victory as far as a right to work ballot amendment that was shot down. We've seen these right to work amendments going all over the country as the conservatives and frankly some corporate Democrats try to continue to break unions. Well, Missouri voters overturned a right to work measure. Let me read that to you about. Labor groups won a landmark and lopsided victory Tuesday as Missourians voted by referendum to overturn the state's new right-to-work law, an embarrassing rejection. For the state's Republican lawmakers, Proposition A asked voters whether or not they would like to enact the right-to-work statute that the state legislature passed and former Governor Eric Greitens signed early last year. The no votes defeated the yes by a 2-to-1 margin, with 937,241 for the proposition and 452,075 against. That's a big-ass margin. AFL-CIO Union Federation called the results historic. The defeat of this poisonous anti-work legislation is a victory for all workers across the country, Richard Trumka, the Federation's president, said in a statement. The ballot measure drew interest far beyond Missouri due to the rapid spread of right-to-work laws around the country. Such laws give workers who are covered by a union contract the option to not pay any union fees while still enjoying the contract's protections. Unions are likely to lose members and funding after a state becomes right-to-work. I mean, that's a very nice, delicate way of saying right-to-work laws are meant to destroy unions so that unions can't make money, they can't get membership dues, and they don't exist. That's why right-to-work laws are thriving in Republican states. And by the way, if you look at the history of this country, if you look at how things have gone downhill since the late 70s, early 80s, the connection is the destruction of unions. There's a reason in the 1950s and 60s we had some of the best economic growth and economic equality in United States history. It was not just the World War II, the post-war boom. It was strong labor unions, because labor unions not only gave their members a livable wage, good benefits, vacation time, and work and protections. You also had private corporations that were not giving union membership or unions. They were also giving and providing decent wages because they didn't want their workers to sign up for a union. So they had to stay competitive because they didn't want their workers to sign up for a union. And yes, definitely. Jen is in the live chat here. Definitely do as she says. That includes sharing the video if you'd like. This, again, is a super chat, so feel free to leave a couple bucks if you want. We need your help to get out on the road. If you don't know, you probably don't, because YouTube has been suppressing the hell out of this channel. Like, to the point where I don't even think people know I'm doing videos every day. It's insane. Definitely check out our reporting from Flint. We were just there again. Definitely check out our reporting from Chicago. We were just there covering protests and the ongoing police violence, which, in my view, is an emergency in Chicago. Chicago is a war zone. So definitely check out those videos, share those videos. So there were victories. Of course, the main headliners, Syed, Cori Bush, lost. That's going to happen. Like, I think it frustrates people, but it does not mean anything overarching as far as progressives not having a chance in 2018's midterms, or if Bernie runs or another actual progressive of winning. The momentum is with the progressive movement. Sometimes it does not automatically equal victories because every race has different dynamics and context. For example, El-Syed, his campaign and his candidacy and his name only really got off the ground and got some momentum probably in the last 2 to 3 weeks of the campaign, when in reality you need more name recognition probably 3 to 4 months before primary day, if that. Bernie Sanders for a long time didn't have the name recognition. He got it by the time the primary was over. He was also up, like I said, against major money from the Democratic side. We should also say Cori Bush, for example. She was one of the leaders for Black Lives Matter in St. Louis. She has been a thorn in the police's side. She has been a thorn in political leaders in St. Louis that want the status quo to continue. They want the status quo to continue. So, Cori Bush, for example, of course, she had money working against her. Of course, she had the media not giving her any attention because the powerful, from the donors to the media to the journalists in St. Louis, were going to do everything to either paint her as an extremist or to paint her in no way and not cover her. Same thing happened with El-Syed. The media largely ignored him in Michigan, in Michigan, because they don't want progressive change. So don't be discouraged.